Hey, what's happening, everybody? Thanks for joining us on Cinema Recap. Today we're going to check out that 2009 horror comedy movie, Jennifer's Body. Spoilers ahead. We start off with a young girl named Anita Needy Lesnicki, better known as Needy, seated in a mental asylum. We have a bunch of envelopes and papers surrounding her as she's talking about the crazy amount of letters she receives in a day. Now, she explains how she's different from everybody else in there. Unlike them, she isn't swayed by the doctor's minor attempts to suppress chaos and fights at the asylum. They encourage them to take up sports and other activities to tire them out. She identifies herself as a kicker, which we soon find out why. One of the in-house doctors comes in and confronts her about the lack of proper food intake. And this triggers her, so she kicks the lady, storming up a fight.
I recommend you shut the fuck up.
And then she's forcefully pushed into an empty cell. As the night sets in, Needy recalls how and when she began to lose her sanity and the reason for her ending up in here. Welcome to Devil's Kettle, the town named after a waterfall. It's where it all began. A rugged Jennifer is lying on a bed as Needy intensely stares at her by the window. The two were high school best friends, almost as close as sisters. But things changed. She begins to explain the events that led up to it. Yeah, it's a flashback within a flashback. Nolan would be impressed. Their contrasting appearances and personalities made it hard for people to believe how close they actually were.
We're totally lesbian gay.
Jennifer tells Needy about a music band coming to perform at their town. They're called Low Shoulder, and Jennifer was fawning over the lead singer she saw on the band's MySpace page. For the Gen Z kids, MySpace is an ancient Facebook. Forget about it. Needy initially refuses that idea, because she's already made promises with Chip, her boyfriend, for the night. But she eventually gives in. Needy spends her time seriously contemplating over her outfits, so as to look like a cool kid and live up to being Jennifer's bestie. Chip begins to complain about how Needy always complies and does everything Jennifer says, but she's naive and in denial of his statement. She claims how they both just happen to have a lot in common, and they're best friends, or BFFs as she's putting it. So Jennifer arrives and they head to the show in her borrowed car. The 2003 Chrysler Sebring takes me back.
Stop kidnapping my girlfriend.
They get to Melody Lane, a local pub, with the bare minimum going on for them. Just a few minutes in and Jen's already turning heads, having a line of guys take their shot at her. But she sees herself to be too good for any of them. Then the band arrives, diverting everyone's attention. Low Shoulder, a band of black outfits and eyeliner. Before K-pop groups, these guys were the real deal. Jennifer's already drooling on them, and she drags Needy to go and make a move. She goes ahead and introduces herself and Needy to the band members. The lead singer plays along with Jennifer and has her all excited and giddy.
It's amazing.
When she walks away to get the guy Nikolai some drinks, he's quick to whisper and discuss Jennifer with his band. Needy overhears the guys whispering about her, and right away she gets defensive and calls him out on it. When Jen gets back with the drinks, Needy asks her to forget about those guys. But Jennifer's too infatuated and thought otherwise. Low Shoulder begins soon enough, playing their number for the night. Needy notices a small fire break out in the corner of the stage. Only as she begins to process it, the fire starts to get out of hand. People start to panic, resulting in a stampede, everybody getting hurt right in front of Needy's eyes. She gets herself together and flees the place with Jennifer. And the fire just goes to show you that that place couldn't handle Low Shoulder's music. So now Jen, who seemed to be in a state of shock, lifelessly follows her friend, who escapes through the bathroom window.
Jennifer?
Oh, thank God you guys are all right. I've been looking everywhere for you two.
One of the band members, Nikolai, who Jennifer was eyeing on earlier, approaches the two of them and suggests that they head into his van, as it would be a safe option at the moment. He hands over his drink to Jen, pushing her to drink it, and then he takes her with him, while Needy's left at a loss of words. Needy tries to convince Jen to leave with her, but, she's in a weird trance now, and just continues into that guy's van. All Needy could do was stand there helpless, knowing that her best friend wasn't in good hands. This guy's reminding her of childhood evils, which is terrifying her. Needy hurries home and calls up her boyfriend, venting to him about what just happened. She breaks down and tells him that they have to find Jennifer, but he retaliates, saying that this isn't about her. Now, to be fair, Chip, she is sort of the main character.
Jesus Christ, there's somebody here.
Needy gets startled when she hears the doorbell ring. She stays on the call with Chip as she slowly makes her way downstairs to have a look, but is finding no one on the other side of the door. A faint shadow moves behind her, and she doesn't notice. She ends the call with Chip and heads back inside. Feeling anxious, she walks down the hallway, checking the door to the basement to see if there was an intruder. And when she gets to the kitchen, she tightens the water tap after hearing the drip. She turns around and boom, there's Jennifer. And then she starts asking her if she's okay. In response, Jennifer flashes a creepy smile with some blood stained on her teeth and lips. Nice. So Needy's worries turn into fear when she sees Jennifer open up the fridge and grab that rotisserie chicken. She's devouring that meat, and then aggressively screams at Needy, her voice all raspy and malicious like an animal. Suddenly, she spits that food back out and throws up more than just food all over the kitchen floor. Ugh. These moving red substances staining her floor. Well, Needy's worried, wanting to help, so she gets closer to her and grabs her wrist, trying to get her back to her senses. But as she does, she feels her pulse and panics. She goes to make a phone call but is stopped when Jennifer grabs her by the shoulder and pushes her against the wall. Jennifer pounces on her and has her mouth hovering over Needy's neck. She's tempted to take that bite, but instead pushes her down and walks out of the house. Needy's over here crying out her name, but she's out of sight. Now, the next morning, Jennifer shows up at school looking completely normal. And of course, Needy's confused. She vividly remembers how abnormal she was the night before.
I knew it was real.
But Jennifer seemed to act as though it never happened. Now the professor, Mr. Wroblewski, walks in and shares his condolences for all the lives lost in the fire. But Jennifer's narcissistic and cold attitude ticks Needy off. Needy shares the incident about Jennifer with Chip, but he doesn't think much of it and explains how it was a traumatic night for all of them.
It was like evil.
Now Jennifer approaches a guy from school, Jonas Kozel. He lost a family member in the fire last night, and Jennifer takes this fact to her advantage and lures him into the woods and does what she can best, seduce him. But amid their makeout session, she morphs into this monstrous being and just eats this guy alive.
Let it all out, kids.
And later, he's just found in an awful state by the professor. Now later that day, Jennifer calls Needy to tell her about her newly found confidence. But Needy's a little weirded out by all this. And also her tone. Before we go on, like the video, smash the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, or Slender Man will haunt your dreams. Chip interrupts their call and asks her to meet him immediately. Now they discuss the horrendous case of Jonas that took place, and Needy brings up that it's all a coincidence. Just hoping that things don't get any worse, they try not to think about it too much. Well, here's a spoiler. They get a lot worse. Days are passing, and the small town builds a name for itself with the traumatic fire and attracts all the attention from the press. Cue emotional high school montage. This is followed by Mr. Wroblewski making an announcement regarding the incident. He proudly says how Low Shoulder will be donating a small percentage of their album sales for families who lost their loved ones. But soon an argument breaks out between the students. Needy throws out a question of where the rest of the money was going. But the real question is, who in their right mind would buy that album? Needy begins criticizing the band for exploiting the situation and making up rumors. So Needy turns to Jen and mentions how she looks tired, asking if she was okay, with Jennifer responding annoyedly.
Don't look at me like that.
So wannabe emo guy Colin asks Jen out, but she turns him down. And then she changes her mind when she learns that Needy actually finds him rather cool. She tells him to come over to her place for a movie instead. Well, Colin quickly agrees because he wouldn't want to miss the chance to spend some time with someone way out of his league. Needy and Chip spend the night together, while Colin's making his way to meet Jen at her place. And when he gets to the address, he's a little confused by how isolated and eerie it is, but he walks in nonetheless. The house is abandoned and dark. I don't know how many red flags you need, but nothing can be too big of an obstacle when it comes to being Jennifer's probable lover. He sees her waiting for him, surrounded by candles. What starts out as playful and seductive turns into absolute horror, with Jen eating out Colin's guts as he's laying down helplessly. Meanwhile, Needy and Chip are busy enjoying their wild teenage night when Needy begins to see dreadful sights before her. She gasps to shock and realization, but Chip's over here taking her screams as a boost to his ego. Needy gets up and hurries out of the house and starts driving home. Car tires are screeching when Jennifer walks into the middle of the road, as Needy's screaming in shock at the sight before her, turning that vehicle away. A beastly Jen pounces on that car, but Needy just drives off. She gets home, panting and crying, calling out for her mother, but there was no one home. And as she's sitting on the couch hugging her knees, Needy recalls memories of Jennifer, her cheering her on the bleachers as Jennifer led the cheerleading team. So she goes to bed and freaks out when it's Jennifer lying down beside her. Man.
Needy, enough with the screaming. You're such a cliche.
She's acting all calm and cool and gets closer to Needy to kind of make a move on her. All right, we get it, Jen. You can pull all the guys and girls in Devil's Kettle. But the two of them look like they're getting a little carried away. But after they pull apart, Jen begins to explain what actually happened on the night of the fire. She says how she was tied up and driven towards the waterfalls. They used her as part of a satanic ritual for the sake of the indie rock band. You see, I bet One Direction didn't know about this. They brutally hurt Jennifer that night, but she woke up from the dead and made her way to Needy's house afterwards, discovering that she just had to eat to survive, much like all of us, except her diet is humans.
What do you mean, when you're full?
Now we're here at Colin's funeral, and after, Needy takes it upon herself to learn more about what Jennifer really was. She gathers all her info and explains it to Chip. And she says that on the night of the ritual, Jennifer had lied about being a virgin. When a sacrifice is impure, it leads to the person turning into something inhumane and demonic, which explained her cannibalistic nature. She was neither alive nor dead, as per the laws of science. The high school dance was right around the corner. Needy knew exactly how it would end. Chip finds it hard to believe all her crazy theories.
Needy, I think you need help.
And is kind of disappointed about not being able to go to the dance together. Now on the night of the dance, Needy arrives before Chip, and she scans the place, looking for Jen. As Chip is making his way to school, he meets up with Jen, and she asks him about Needy and makes up a story of how Needy was acting this way because of the intimate relationship she had with Colin. Doesn't take much for Chip to be convinced. He's all heartbroken and upset. Jennifer's taking advantage of his vulnerable state. And once again, you guessed it, folks, seduces him.
I just can't believe that she would mess with your head like this.
She lures him to an isolated pool. And when Chip tries to resist her, she pushes him into the water and then begins to attack as he's struggling to fight back. Needy's frantically running and making her way towards him. And when she gets to him, Jennifer's already devouring Chip's neck. Oh, that's it. No one touches her boyfriend. Needy plunges into the water and the two girls are fighting recklessly. She riles Jennifer up by bringing up her insecurities and mocking her. Jen's prepared to make Needy her next target, but Chip stabs her in the stomach with a rod before she gets the chance to. She's physically hurt, but remaining unaffected, she escapes out of the building. After all this mayhem came to an end, Needy aids Chip. He was lying on the floor breathing his last breaths. Jennifer's attack on him was brutal. They share a sentimental moment, with Chip complimenting how she looks good in the dress. The dude's clearly losing his senses by that point because, have you seen the dress? And then he passes away soon after.
I love you.
Now coming back to a rugged Jennifer, who's lying on the bed as Needy intensely stares at her by the window. This was her last straw. Needy breaks in through the window and begins to attack Jennifer with a box cutter. The girl's fighting an almost demon. Was this the only weapon that she could come up with? Jennifer bites her shoulder in retaliation and they both begin to fight aggressively. Jen's got the floating ability to her advantage and she tackles Needy mid-air. But Needy's not giving up. To her, Jen was no longer the same person she once knew. She knew she had to detach herself from Jen forever. And that's when she rips away the one thing that resembled their friendship. She pulls on that BFF necklace hanging on Jennifer's neck, throwing it away. And it all comes to an end with that. Jennifer falls back onto the bed and Needy jumps on top. She uses that cutter on Jennifer's chest, ending her life. And then Jen's mom walks into this frightful scene with her daughter in bed and Needy posing as a murderer. And from that point, she's officially classified as psychotic. And that's how she ended up at the mental asylum. All right, but no one ever found Chip? Is that dude still lifeless by the pool? Well, Jennifer's bite on Needy's shoulder from that night is still very prominent, but it had its perks. That wound added onto her new personality with some of Jennifer's supernatural abilities. She floats her way up to the cell's window and effortlessly breaks out of there. And as she walks out, she comes across the lake where she happens to discover a knife. It was the same one used by the guys who attacked Jen that night. That's when she made the decision. She's going to get her revenge and end the people who started it all. Low Shoulder. The band's on their successful national tour, and I don't think they can imagine the horrors coming their way. But for now, that's the end. Thanks for sticking with us on the recap of Jennifer's Body. Released by Fox Atomic and Dune Entertainment, starring Megan Fox, Amanda Seyfried, and Johnny Simmons. So who do you think would win a probable round 2 to the fight, Jennifer or Needy? Let us know with that hashtag Cinema Recap in the comments. Again, thanks for watching. Till next time.